Hello my lovely people and welcome to Owen's Mind, a light-hearted trip through the contents of my head and the world in general. It is Wednesday the 23rd of October, my name is Owen and here is what is on my mind today. So as usual I've picked out 5 stories making the headlines I want to give my thoughts on. Links are in the description below so you can read each article in full and show those original publications some love. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So story number 1 today comes to us from CNBC. London's world famous black cabs go green with the launch of a fully electric vehicle. Yeah, so this is on CNBC today, and a fully electric version of London's iconic black cab was launched on Wednesday. It's a zero-emission vehicle called the Dynamo Taxi, and it's based on a Nissan NV200 Evalia. Okay, so good stuff. It's had a range of 187 miles on a single charge, can carry a maximum of 5 passengers, and is wheelchair accessible. Brilliant. So London's connection to fully electric cabs apparently dates back to 1897 with a vehicle called the Bercy. Powered by various electric motors, the Bercy had a range of 30 miles. Its top speed was 9 miles an hour, according to the Science Museum, but the company behind it was unprofitable and shut in 1899. So not a great success story, but we're back. We're back now, fully electric. So the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, said in a statement issued on Wednesday that working with cabbies and cab drivers to go electric was a key part of their plans to improve the air quality in London. The Dynamo Taxi will accelerate the retirement of polluting diesel taxis from the streets across the UK, improving air quality and helping to tackle climate change emergency and create a green economy, he added. Along with the red double-decker buses and the tube, the black cabs are an iconic part of London's transport infrastructure. So yeah, if you ever watch an American movie which features London, the establishing shot of London is always a black cab, a red double-decker bus, or Big Ben, some of those landmarks. But the black cab is iconic. However, you know, times have changed. So in recent years, efforts have been made to reduce their impact on the environment. Since January 2018, taxis in London being licensed for the first time have had to have a zero emission capable status, which means their carbon dioxide emissions must not be greater than 50 grams per kilometre, and they need to have a minimum zero emission range of 30 miles. The Dynamo Taxi is priced at £55,495, although it is eligible for a £7,500 grant to reduce costs, obviously to encourage companies and individuals to purchase them. It adds to London's sustainable transport options, joining the London EV company's TX vehicle on the city streets. Central London is now home to an ultra-low emission zone, or ULEZ. The ULEZ operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and vehicles which do not meet ULEZ's emission standards are required to pay a daily charge to drive into the zone. Taxis with a London licence are currently exempt from this charge, although there's a 15-year age limit for the vehicles. So they understand that the current generation of taxis, they are, you know, they're essential. So you can't keep charging people for picking people up and driving through this zone, but it's got to be younger than 15 years old. Oh, so my thoughts on this can only be a good thing, because their clean air is a big deal. The environment as a whole, you know, we're looking at everything at the minute with climate change protesters and this kind of thing. It's a hot topic and it needs to be addressed. And so this is a good thing. Fully electric vehicle. So not only is it good for the environment, but pedestrians, because London streets are busy with pedestrians and people walking about, so it's going to be better for them. An electric vehicle, this kind of city centre kind of makes the most sense for it, because that 187-mile range for most people is going to be more than adequate, because most people through the week will do generally short journeys to work and back in their car, you know, and reserve the longer journeys for weekends and that kind of thing. If you've got a big commute, if you're a travelling salesman or a driver or a courier, that kind of thing, then maybe not for you just yet. But here they make more sense. So yeah, brilliant. This is the way it's going. Eventually it's all going to go this way, and you can argue how effective you think electric cars are. I think they're not quite there yet for me, but you know, for a lot of people, and for the black cabs, for me it makes sense. 187 miles, I don't know how far a black cab will generally go in a day picking up fares, but if they're kind of confined to central London, that should more than cover it, I imagine. And because these are the black cab company, is, you know, they're not, it's more business owned than individual. Hopefully, you know, they'll go back to their central depot where they're stored, be charged overnight, nice and safe, and come out again for the next day. So brilliant news all around. Good for the environment, good for pedestrians, and just good for us as a whole, as a species. Perfect. So moving on to story number 2. So story number 2, slightly heavy affair, I'm afraid, but you know, this was on my mind. So Belgian Paralympian, I apologise for the name, I think it's Marieke Vervoet, dies age 40 through euthanasia. So yeah, this is in CNN today. The Belgian Paralympian Marieke Vervoet has died age 40 after ending her life through euthanasia. She was a Paralympic gold medalist in London 2012, but she lived with a degenerative spinal condition that caused her constant pain and made sleeping very difficult. A statement from her home city of Diest said Vervoet responded to her choice on Tuesday evening. So she won gold in the T52 100-metre wheelchair race and a silver in the 200-metre race at London 2012 Paralympics, claimed 2 further medals at Rio in 2016. Euthanasia is legal in Belgium, and in 2008 she received assisted suicide approval after receiving consent from 3 different doctors. So I'm guessing she went and had a whole raft of interviews and they discussed her condition, and they essentially said that she had the approval to go ahead as and when she felt like it. In an interview with CNN in 2016, she explained her decision to sign the euthanasia papers gave her back control. She says, I no longer have a fear of death. I see it as an operation where you go to sleep and never wake up. For me, it's something peaceful. I don't want to suffer when I'm dying. When it becomes too much for me to handle, I will have my life in my own hands. So she competed in the T52 classification for athletes who have limited or no mobility below their waist and who have impaired motor skills in their arms and hands. She retired from the sport after the Paralympics in 2016, admitting it had just become too hard on her body. So she spent more time with her family friends and a therapy dog called Zen. When I'm going to have an epileptic attack, she warns me 1 hour before. I don't know how she feels, it Vervoet said of Zen. So, fantastic. This dog was a great support for her. Apart from a few countries, euthanasia is illegal in most of the world. After signing her confirmation papers, Vervoet said she wanted to use the attention she garnered to educate other nations that lack assisted suicide measures for people whose suffering is unbearable. She goes, I think there will be fewer suicides when every country has the law of euthanasia. I hope everybody sees that this is not murder, but it makes people live longer. So, this is a huge subject, and I'm not going to pretend to try and tackle it here. So I'm just going to give you my personal opinion on it. My personal opinion is, number one, this woman is incredibly brave. It's an incredibly brave thing to do. I'm not sure I could do it. But then again, I'm not living with what she was living with. And just the idea of being in constant pain and discomfort and your life being just a trauma 24/7, to have the ability to have the choice to say, it's too much, I want to step away, I want to just fall asleep and let that be it, is still an incredibly brave thing to do. I'm not sure I could do it. So whatever your moral stance is on it, and everyone has a moral opinion, and I'm not saying anybody is right or wrong here, it's like you believe what you wish to believe and you support what you wish to support. For me, this was her body, and she had the right to decide how her life should end, and she got to die with dignity, and it was a choice. And that statement at the end, I hope everybody sees this is not murder, it makes people live longer, is people could be confused by how do you mean it makes people live longer? I think what she's trying to say was that knowing you have that way out, knowing that there is a closure to what you're going through, I think would make you feel that you could sustain things a bit longer, because now there's this exit strategy, almost, to put it in cold terms, that if you suffer, you have a particularly bad day, it's like, I know that I've got a way to step off this horrible suffering sort of treadmill where every day is just, pain. So you do maybe endure that little bit more, because then you know that when you want to, you have the right, you have the legal right, nobody's going to get into trouble. You can do this, and you can say your goodbyes, and you can put things into place to make your leaving this world as dignified an experience as possible. And I know all the arguments against euthanasia, and some of them are very valid, and some of them, I think there does need to be more open discussion about it, because there has been stories where people have just, people have assisted their partners just because they could not bear to watch their partner suffering, and those relatives have been charged, because it's illegal, you're essentially murdered somebody, even though you did it with absolute love because of what they were going through. So it's a tough one. This woman sounds like she lived her life entirely on her terms, whatever. It doesn't state what the illness was, but she fought it. She won Olympic medals. She did not let her body dictate to her. And when in her own mind, it was like, okay, this is how I'm going to leave this world. This is my choice. This is my body. And this is how it's going to go. So, absolute respect to her. Yeah, it's a sad story, but it's positive in regards, like I say, she went out on her terms, and fair play to her, and may she rest in peace. Okay, let's move on to story number 3. So story number 3 is in The Guardian today. University racism study criticised for including anti-white harassment. So, yeah, prominent academics and student leaders have criticised the government's equalities watchdog for including prejudice against white British students in its inquiry into racism in UK universities. So they accused the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the EHRC, of drawing a false equivalence between what it described as racial harassment against British white students and staff and the racism suffered by their black and minority ethnic peers. According to the Watchdog Students Survey, 9% of white British students experienced racial harassment, compared with 29% of black students and 27% of Asian students. The report, which was called Tackling Racial Harassment Universities Challenged, highlighted examples of anti-English sentiment at Scottish and Welsh universities. A white English member of staff told the inquiry that 2 Welsh colleagues used a slur when referring to English people. The quote was, "She was speaking English and changed to Welsh for the word, thinking I wouldn't understand. I've never come across so much racism as when I moved to Wales." Heidi Mirza, a visiting professor of race, faith and culture at Goldsmiths University in London, said the inclusion of anti-British sentiment in the report watered down the impact of racism on people of colour. Anti-black, anti-Asian, and Islamophobic and anti-Semitic racism is on a different scale to the anti-English sentiment, she said. The experience that the Scottish and Welsh students might experience will not equate to what skin colour and visible difference means to students on campus. Fope Alalei, a black students officer at the National Union of Students, said the EHRC had ignored pleas and made a roundtable event with the inquiry team earlier this year to exclude the anti-white harassment from their report. She tweeted, "I remember sitting on one of the roundtables and a bunch of students and myself had to explain in excruciating detail that anti-white prejudice should have no place in the report on racial harassment. But I see we were not listened to." She later added there was a definite tension with the students in the room who were concerned about how they were defining racism in the report, and many of us pressed and challenged it. However, the EHRC Chief Executive, Rebecca Hilsenrath, she fought back, denied that including anti-white harassment minimised racism against black and minority ethnic staff. She said, "You're talking about people's thresholds to life and the employment and the future economic well-being. It may be because you're black or because you're Welsh in an English university, but often these things are cumulative. You're away from home, you're still a young person. It's difficult to argue that there are different grades of racism in the sense that clearly we're all looking at an objectively tough outcome for people in terms of what the impact is." But Priyam Varagopal, a reader in the Faculty of English, Cambridge University, said that the false equivalence because it ignored the political and historical context of racism in the UK. She added, "Anti-English sentiment in Wales is emphatically not the same as targeting or disadvantaged black people as a vulnerable minority." Okay, so this is a tough one because I can see both sides of it. So on one side, the authors of the report saying, look, racism is racism, and everybody can suffer from it. Everybody is susceptible to it, sadly. Everybody has, everybody is can be a victim of prejudice, and we included everybody, and 9% of white British students have experienced this. So 9% is not a small figure. However, on the other hand, it is, well, yeah, but they have not had the kind of historical, all of those hundreds of years of historical racism, which is still prevalent today, the way blacks and Asian minorities have. So they have more of a history with it. So the fact that it still continues kind of harkens back to those days when, you know, people were slaves and people were lynched and all these horrendous things that happened to them. So they're saying including this kind of diminishes including the white British people in this report kind of diminishes the racism that other people have, particularly in a visual sense, which was quoted in the thing, and saying that because black people and Asian people have a very obviously recognizable different ethnicity, they are more susceptible and they essentially get more, they're probably more susceptible because it's more identifiable what their race is, as opposed to if you put a load of white people in a room, until you sort of hear them speak, you may not know their nationality. So it's much more visual, so therefore it's easier to target, kind of thing. I think that's what they're getting at. It is a tough one. It is a tough one, and because all racism is abhorrent. It needs to be gotten rid of. It's just, there was a quote on Twitter, I don't know who said it, I wish I could recall, I wasn't going to include it in the story, but it's just come to mind, and they said, it's not enough to be not racist, you have to be anti-racist. You can't just say, well, I'm not a racist. You have to say that you have to act anti-racist. You can't just be, well, I'm not racist, so it doesn't matter. It's like, no, you've got to push back against the people who are as well, because otherwise you're just kind of ignoring it, sort of thing. I just thought it was a really good quote. For me, if you're going to tackle racism, you tackle a lot. And maybe there should have been something else in this report to kind of say, look, everybody suffers. However, there is not degrees of racism, but I kind of see that there is this historical significance that the white British people have not had to go through. You know, through history, we've had it pretty good. And yes, there is. However, it's tough because the young people going through it today, the young black and Asian people going through it, unless they're aware of their history, unless they've been told in their studies or they've looked into it or, you know, family have mentioned it, they're just as, not naive, but they're just as new to it as a white person being abused, unless you know that history. And, you know, most people do, it's out there, and it's a really tough one. It's a really tough one. For me, as I stand on it, it should have been in the report. It's right to be there because racism is, in all forms, is abhorrent. So the fact that it kind of highlighted it in all forms, and it was basically the report was a study, it was an information gathering thing. And the statistics they gathered were 9% of white British people have suffered, you know, which is a lot lower than the 29% black students and 27% of Asian students. It's still a figure, it's still a significant figure. And yes, you could argue that the racism may not be as, it doesn't kind of say how it was delivered, how it was dished out. It's just these people felt like they had been racially abused. You know, so if you historically look at the level of abuse, yes, of course, that people of colour, blacks, Asians, and, you know, all kinds of the non-white ethnicities have suffered far greater than white British people, absolutely. But in the modern context, in regards people today, I think it's a valid stat, and maybe it should have been tempered against, yeah, there is not, I mean, the report says, look, there is not degrees of racism, you just suffer it. But I think there's degrees of severity, and when it comes to history, yes, you know, there has been far more heinous things done to ethnic minorities than there is to white British, of course. But, so yeah, I can see both sides. I do think it should have been a report. but maybe there should have been a caveat in there to say yes, but you know, we recognise that the historical component that, you know, others have suffered does make it maybe, I don't know. Let me know what you think, because for me this is a tough one. You know where I stand on it. You know, all racism should be gone. Absolutely, there's no argument at all, and anybody who suffers it should be counted, regardless. So yeah, let's move on. Story number 4. This is in the Telegraph. Okay, light affair. So, motorists sent on a 41-mile detour while a stretch of road 65 feet long is closed for sewage work. So when I saw this headline, I just assumed, oh, it will just be a story about someone sat-nav sending them on a ridiculous diversion. Nope, this is all council approved. So yeah, a small section of the A352 in Godmanston, Dorset, will be closed between Monday and Friday next week for work on a sewerage system. Just over 65 feet of the carriageway will be closed off by workmen. But Dorset County Council have given an official diversion measuring an incredible 41 miles that goes through another county. The usual route along the road takes around a second to cover while travelling at the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. The council's diversion is estimated to take around an hour to complete, 3,600 times longer than the usual duration of the journey. The diversion route will take motorists along the A352 to Charlton Down and Charminster before taking the A37 towards Grimston. It then follows the A37, crossing the county border into Yeovil, Somerset, before joining the A30 towards Sherborne and heading back into Dorset. Drivers will then head back south, passing through the village of Middlemarsh, Minter, Magna and Cerne Abbas. Anyone caught using a closed stretch of road will be handed a £1,000 fine. Okay, so the council have said, they've justified this, saying the length of the detour is necessary as it has to be suitable for the type of traffic that would normally use the closed section. So they're basically saying it's an A road, so we're going to send vehicles down A road size roads to get here, and it just so happens to take 41 miles. Local residents have disagreed and said the route is ridiculous. Heather Chapman, who runs a Green Valley Yurts near the closure, said it's just crazy. There doesn't seem to be any logic to it. Dorset County Council said the diverted route has to travel along A roads, so it's an A road that's being closed. They also acknowledge that most local residents would ignore the diversion and use smaller roads to get around to work. Okay, so I drive for a living. I drive a big truck. So road closures are a pain. They're a nightmare. They can be. This just seems absolute madness for a section of road 65 feet long. Now it's an A road, so being that it's an A road means that it's got at least 2 lanes. Can they not shut one side and have temporary traffic lights for 65 feet? I was in, where was I today? I was in Bridlington today, and yesterday I was kind of out Wakefield way. There must have been probably 6 or 7 sets of temporary traffic lights because they were working on the road. Improvements, gas works, whatever they happen to be doing. And they just shut one side. And some of these were a good 200 feet. This is 65 feet. You're not telling me that this work could not be done in the sort of evening hours or overnight. Or they couldn't shut one side for the sake of 65 feet to get vehicles round. Because sending people what would normally take a second on a diversion of 1 hour just to get this 65 feet just seems lunacy to me. Absolute lunacy. So, yeah, I don't know. I can't see the section of road, so I don't know if the thing, but sewage works tend to run down one side of the work. They don't run down underneath the entire road. They run down either side because that's where the drainage and things is. So surely you can shut one side. Maybe not. You know, if you're gonna say, well, everything's got to stay on A roads, it's like, well, surely you can manage the B roads through the day, even if you have it manned. You know, with stop and go signs and just kind of. But 41 miles, a 41-mile diversion. If you got to that sign, you pull up at these traffic lights and there's that little yellow sign. It says diversion is an hour this way. And you follow it, then there's divert that way, and you start going, and it's like, I've been going a while, yeah, and off you go again. And at the end of a 10-mile stretch, there's a diversion for this way. Oh my God, 41 over an hour. How frustrating is that going to be? So, yeah, craziness. Absolute craziness. There's got to be a better way, surely. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. Our last story of the day. So, this is in USA Today. Tiffany, the jeweler, Tiffany & Co. is offering an advent calendar and the price tag is $112,000. So, Tiffany's latest idea of counting down to the holiday, a calendar priced in 6 figures. The luxury jeweler unveiled its ultimate advent calendar with unique pieces of jewellery for each day over the 24-day period. And it's going to cost you $112,000. Now, don't be too sad, but they're only making 4 of them, so you might miss out. They're probably already sold out. Anyway. Calendar includes 24 items wrapped in the company's signature blue boxes, each ensconced within the advent calendar that measures more than 4 feet tall and is designed to resemble the frontage at the flagship store on 5th Avenue in New York City. So, a real centerpiece. You're not going to put that above the fireplace, are you? If you get that, it's 4 feet. It's like you want everybody to know you've got this. So some of the items are an extra large smile pendant, an 18-karat rose gold with diamonds, an 18-karat rose gold bracelet with diamonds, gold earrings. Apparently you can view the complete list on Tiffany's website if you're interested. Tiffany says the advent calendar is assembled upon delivery using its white glove service. So I don't know what that is. I'm guessing it's, they will turn up and they will place it in your home. White glove service, which usually means it's handled incredibly carefully and very much to your specifications, as you would want it to be if you're spending $112,000. Apparently the jeweler now is expanding. They've launched their first collection for men and is also expanding to home items like cocktail shakers and beer mugs. So, as we've said on this channel many times, it's that price point thing. It's what are you prepared to pay? What is it worth to you? If you feel, you know what, it is worth that to me. I love some bling. It's Tiffany. It's a well-known brand, and I want to be able to show this off. I'm going to put this 4-foot calendar in my window with spotlights on it so everybody knows how minted I am. Have at it. There you go. $112,000 for you. Yeah, they've only made 4, so you've got that rarity there. It's only going to be 4 of these things, so it's going to be a real statement piece. If you've got the money, for me, it's if I had the money, still not for me. I think it's excess. I think that money could go elsewhere, and yeah, over a month you're going to end up with 24 new pieces of jewellery. And if there's pendants and earrings and bracelets and various bits and pieces, yeah, you can have something for every occasion, I suppose. But if I'm spending a lot of money on an item, I want to buy one of them. I want it to feel special. Whereas, here's 24 lots of jewellery. There you go. It wouldn't feel as special if it was one item. If it was a calendar with bits and pieces of usual chocolates and bits, and then you had one real signature piece that was just for you, you're like, okay, that's special. But now you've got, I got some earrings today, I might get some earrings tomorrow. I haven't read the list, but for me it wouldn't do that. And if I had the money, I wouldn't get it, because for me it just represents a bit of excess. But if it's your thing, I don't judge. Feel free to have at it. Anyway, so that's it, guys. As always, links to all the stories can be found in the description below. Feel free to go and check them out. Answers in the comments, please, along with... Oh, I messed that up. Wind that back. Let's pretend I haven't done that. So, let me know what you think about this video and tell me what's the most ridiculous diversion you've ever had to take, either through someone telling you wrong directions, or a sat-nav, or some roadworks, or just something daft that you've had to go around. Answers in the comments along with what you'd like to share. These were my thoughts. They're not necessarily important. They're not necessarily right or wrong. They're just what was on my mind. So until next time, bye for now.